Hi, Acadiana. I'm Meteorologist Dave Baker. Welcome to Let's Talk Tropics on this Tuesday, July the 2nd. A lot to talk about. Still got a very powerful hurricane. In fact, an extremely dangerous hurricane with Category 5 status still over the Caribbean Sea. That one coming through the Leeward and Windward Islands yesterday and really doing a lot of damage down toward Grenada as well as St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And it is still trucking along south of the Dominican Republic, and will gradually move toward Jamaica as we head into tomorrow. And then the next area that's in the crosshairs is the Yucatan Peninsula about 3 days from now. And then as we head toward the end of the week and the weekend, you could be moving into the southern part of the Gulf of Mexico. So let's just go ahead and get started with what we've got a little locally right now. Just a real quick peek at the radar. Not much happening over Acadiana right now, but there are some widely scattered showers that are trying to develop here over southeastern portions of Louisiana. Those are going to be drifting westward, so still going to keep the rain chance at about 50-50 today, and most of those will be coming in from the east. And we've got some fine weather out there, although it is very hot. We have those heat advisories and excessive heat warnings that are out as our temperatures have continued to climb across Acadiana. And looks like we're going to top out in the upper 90s a little bit later on in the day, with heat index values going as high as 116. Right now we have a temperature of 96 with a dew point of 76 here in Lafayette with a heat index of 110. But there for a while, just a little while ago, we were seeing the heat index values running up to as high as 113, but no problems on the roadways today as everything is nice and dry. So let's go ahead, and first of all I want to show you, as we looked at Barbados yesterday as the storm was passing through. Today I've got a live cam from Kingston, Jamaica, and Kingston is actually on the southeast side of the island of Jamaica. So the harbor here is actually, the camera is pointing off toward the west, it looks like, but to the left of where the camera is, and sometimes it does move around, as you can see right there. As you look out to sea, you're basically looking farther toward the south. So right now everything is pretty quiet in Jamaica at this point, but we are going to watch these cameras tomorrow, because this time tomorrow Hurricane Beryl could be coming very, very close to Kingston, Jamaica. So let's go ahead and look at the tropical weather outlook. First of all, Hurricane Beryl, of course, you've been hearing about that for the last week or so. And out toward the east, we have disturbance 96L. On Monday, or rather on Friday, it was looking, or Sunday rather, it was looking like we were going to have a high chance for development for 96L, but now the National Hurricane Center putting a much lower chance, and a lot of it has to do with dry air and Saharan dust, and we will talk about 96L here toward the end of this broadcast. Meanwhile, the Caribbean satellite, clearly you can see Hurricane Beryl is moving along. It is still a Category 5 hurricane with winds at 160 miles per hour, but it is starting to take on a little bit of shear on the west side of the system. Reconnaissance aircraft were out there earlier, found some slightly higher pressures and slightly lower wind speeds. So it was dropped from 165 to 160. By the way, if you didn't know, Hurricane Beryl became the strongest hurricane to ever develop during the month of June, which broke Audrey's record back in '57, and so far, now that we've transitioned into July, it is now the most powerful hurricane ever during the month of July, beating Hurricane Emily back in 2005. So this one's been smashing records and will continue to smash records as it moves off toward the west. But you can see yesterday, as it got dark, we were looking at a very solid Category 5 hurricane, good structure, good symmetry, a well-defined eye. Today, we still have good symmetry. We still have very good structure, although the eye seems to be clouding in a bit. Could be an eye wall replacement cycle. That happens with these very powerful hurricanes. But if you also would notice here on the west side of the hurricane, you'll see some of these higher, thinner clouds out here to the west, kind of coming in from the southwest and moving northeast, and it is starting to hit the northwest side of the hurricane. So it is encountering some shear, and that is in the forecast. forecast, even though it's still expected to be a major hurricane as it moves toward Jamaica, which, by the way, on this map kind of comes in the last few frames. It's right there is Jamaica. And so tomorrow we still think it's going to be a major hurricane, but it may not be a Category 5. But when you're playing at home, Category 3, 4, or 5, those are all still very devastating hurricanes. So let's get to the particulars. First of all, as of the 10 o'clock advisory this morning, location was 15.3 north and 68.9 west, so down to the south of the Dominican Republic. Winds 160 miles per hour with the pressure running at 938. And you can see the cone here. This is the official National Weather Service forecast, the cone right here. And I've been looking at social media. I know a lot of folks are sharing models, and I will say that just about everybody is sharing correct information, but I've seen a handful of social media users that are going through and picking pages out of the hurricane forecast, kind of cherry picking it almost the way a politician would cherry pick Bible verses. But you really have to pay attention to the times of some of these models. Most of the models are real. It just may be a little bit misleading because of the time. In fact, just about maybe 20 minutes ago, I saw a post that showed all the model tracks heading right toward Louisiana, and then I looked at the date, and it was actually 2 days old already, and it was just posted within the last hour. So you really need to pay attention to what you're looking at. Make sure you know how to read the times on these forecasts so that you're grabbing the proper information. So there's a lot of extremes back and forth that are out there, but the official information is really important. And when we're looking at the cone here, I will tell you that virtually every one of the spaghetti lines, at least for the initial forecast, are in this area. And then you get a little bit of a turn toward the end, which hence would go right there with the margin of error on the cone there at the top. So looking at those hurricane models, and again, we're just going to focus on the specific hurricane models first. The hurricane over here, just south of the Dominican Republic, everything pretty much in agreement that it's going to be heading over to around Jamaica sometime this time tomorrow. And then pretty much all the models are in agreement for a track to head it over toward the Yucatan Peninsula, across into the Gulf of Mexico. Now, I will say these have trended a little bit farther toward the north, but still a significant number of the models are heading right toward the Rio Grande Valley with a couple of outliers here. And I want to show you this 168, that's the time frame on there. So 120 hours is 5 days, 144 is 6, and 168 is 7. So some of the model lines that you see here only go out 5 days, some of them go out 7, and some go out 10. So when we look at the intensity models, you'll see how those really drop off. The ensemble models of the GFS, again, you've got some lines that are trying to skew their way over toward Louisiana, but you really want to kind of pay attention to the main line that's in the middle. The darker line that's there in the middle is really the official forecast there, and that's what you want to pay attention to because that is generally where the consensus of the models are, the average of the models goes. So the black line that you're seeing there in the middle is really what you want to pay attention to, which you can see is well to the west, but there's that kind of margin of error, and you'll see that as the cone starts to continue to push in there over the next couple of days. So let's go ahead and move on and see if I can get rid of those lines there. The JEPS ensemble model, again, just kind of another run of several of the same type of models with different solutions that come in. Most of the action, again, just for entertainment purposes, is coming across the Yucatan Peninsula and then down into the southern part of the Bay of Campeche. Now, the hurricane is already dealing with some shear, and we kind of talked about this a little bit here. The low right there, that's the hurricane. It's in a fairly low wind shear environment, but remember when I was showing you that satellite image, you could see some of those higher cloud tops kind of coming in from the southwest and blowing off the tops. That's some of this shear that we're seeing here to the west and north of the hurricane. But let's zoom out, and what we're going to do is we're going to go all the way out to Sunday. So we're going to go out to day 5 because a lot of folks are concerned about the Gulf of Mexico. Remember, the forecast track takes it over to the Yucatan and then basically across the Gulf of Mexico. So by Sunday, the GFS has low pressure there, which would be Beryl. But notice there's a high wind shear environment off toward the west, but it might have a little bit of a chance here off the Yucatan, depending on how much energy the Yucatan steals from it as it goes over land. I also saw a couple of posts earlier talking about the mountains of the Yucatan are going to be able to rip this thing apart. There are no mountains in the Yucatan. It is as flat as Louisiana. You start to get into some mountains in Belize as well as northern parts of Guatemala, but you have to be looking at the geography of the Yucatan, and it is relatively flat. So I see that on the comments, a lot of people don't like being told that it might go to Texas and Louisiana, and you do need to be ready. And that's why I've had Let's Talk Tropics going for a long time and telling you to be ready for this back on June the 1st. Although I know a lot of people like to procrastinate, and I am the same way, but you really need to be ready for anything that's coming in. If Beryl misses us, which right now our odds are in our favor that it will miss us, but it's always good to go ahead and get the supplies that you need when they're available out there and the weather is good. A couple of things that are going in its favor, though, are the water temperatures. We've been talking about this. They are sky high. They are basically the same as where they would be in August and September. And the tropical cyclone heat potential, which is the deeper those 80-degree waters go. Remember, Hurricane Beryl is right here. It's very close to an area of high heat potential. The same thing goes when you get over toward Jamaica and then even over toward the Yucatan Peninsula. You've got some high cyclone heat potential there as well. That is 80-degree water, not just at the surface, but going very deep. It is a bit weaker out toward the west as you get into the Bay of Campeche, but still, there's enough out there that it could help to sustain a tropical system. So let's also look at the upper level pattern. This is something that a lot of folks have been talking about on social media, and this is the forecast again for early Sunday. So we're going out 5 days. GFS has Beryl right about there, and yes, you do have a bit of a dip in the jet stream here, but a lot of this I think is going to be shifting more toward the southeast, and I'm not sure if it's actually going to be able to pick up on this. It could possibly bring it into Texas and then grab it in and pull it off toward the northeast like that. But as far as a formidable tropical system, based on the information that we have today, it looks like it would stay well to the south of Louisiana. Not saying don't continue to get prepared, because even if this one misses us, there will be more over the course of the hurricane season. So that's a look at the upper level pattern. Now, let's start to get into the intensity models. And the intensity is a lot harder to forecast than a track forecast. So here are all of our computer models, and you can see that the winds are over here on the left-hand side, tropical storm category 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 up there. And at the bottom, you've got the timeline. So going out 5 days, which would be right about there, that's where that Sunday forecast is, and you'll see that a lot of these computer models, they end at day 5, and then you've got some that go to day 6 and some that go to day 7 out here. But the majority by the next couple of days is going to keep it as a pretty strong hurricane here, at least going over to Jamaica. It looks like we're going to be seeing a category 3 or higher here, and then as it gets to the Yucatan, we might be talking about a weaker category 1 or 2, and then I think what we're looking at here is when it's over land before it reemerges out in the Bay of Campeche, which would be this time frame right here, 120 hours. And you can see several of them have it as a tropical storm or a low-end hurricane, but there's a couple of them here that still keep it as a major hurricane. And then when you get even farther down the road into day 7, the intensity models are pretty much split, half of them going with a tropical storm or less, and a handful of them going with a category 2 to category 3 hurricane. So we'll go through the individual models, and again, I want to go all the way out to Sunday because we're pretty certain Jamaica is going to get hit by this as well as the Yucatan. So just to satisfy folks on the extended forecast, we're going to look at the GFS model for early Sunday morning. So we're going out 5 days, and the low pressure area from Beryl, according to the GFS, is just off the Texas and Mexican coastline. That's the Rio Grande River right there. So, but also notice it's a 1008 low, so it isn't very deep on the low pressure. That might be a tropical depression, weak tropical storm at best. Euro model, a little bit different of a solution. One of the things you'll notice is it's a little bit slower. Hard to see on this map here, but that is the Yucatan Peninsula right in there. If I can get this telestrator to work right there, that's the west side of the Yucatan Peninsula, and this is the Mexican coast over here. So this is out in the Bay of Campeche, 996 on the pressure. So that's probably a tropical storm. So based on the Euro compared to the GFS, this one is slower and also has it a little bit stronger. The HWRF, which is more of a concentrated high-resolution hurricane model, also has it in the Bay of Campeche. The Texas Gulf Coast and the Rio Grande Valley is probably right about up here. You can see the latitude lines here. By the way, we're at 30 degrees here in Lafayette on the latitude and 92 west. So we would be way up. We would be way up here at the top somewhere and off this map, way up there at the top. But the HWRF, which is the Hurricane Weather Research Forecast System, shows a 993. That's very similar to what was shown by the Euro, and the Euro also has it in about the same place as the HWRF. So you got some agreement between those two models. The GFS is still the one that's a little bit faster, closer to the Texas coast and weaker. Now the HAFS model, which is something that's a little bit newer, and the HAFS is the Hurricane Analysis and Forecast System, and this is what we're going to be transitioning from the HWRF, which is an older version, to this one, which is a newer version. And I will say that these two models, the HWRF and the HAFS, have both performed pretty well when it comes to the intensity of Hurricane Beryl. This one is a little bit closer for position on the GFS. Here's Texas right here. Here's Mexico here. There's the Rio Grande River. So this position is very similar to the GFS, but the intensity is a lot deeper. 976 there, that would be a Category 1/Category 2 hurricane. So for the most part, we're seeing agreement between the models on about where this will be, but the intensity models are quite different. So again, 5 days out, that's still kind of in la-la land when it comes to the weather forecasting. So we'll just kind of watch and wait, but most models do have it go across Jamaica, the Yucatan Peninsula, and then emerge in the southern part of the Gulf of Mexico. So a lot to talk about there with Hurricane Beryl. And if you are preparing, I would continue to prepare. If you're not preparing, I would go ahead and look at your list to see what we're going to be seeing. That way, if you look at your list, you could see what you need, start to get your preparations done, and then you can also be ready for this one if it were to turn on our direction, or the next one, because there will be several. It is still very early in the hurricane season. So let's get out there and look and see what else we got. 96L, that's right here. Not looking so hot today. It had a high chance for development a couple of days ago. Now it has a low chance for development. Another pretty good tropical wave starting to work its way here off of the African coast. But I'll tell you, the models don't seem to want to play with either one of these, but they also didn't want to play much with Beryl, as we left you late last week. So there is 96L, a lot of Saharan dust surrounding it, in fact, getting all the way around it. And then out here is your other tropical wave, and you can see there's quite a bit of Saharan dust and dry air there too. So those are some inhibiting factors. And as we actually look at the Saharan dust map, here is 96L right here, and you can see that it's basically surrounded by the dry air as well as the Saharan dust, and anything that's trying to come off of the Atlantic or the African coast is also going to run into some dry air and a significant amount of Saharan dust as well. So a couple of inhibiting factors. So right now, just by looking at the models and looking at the Saharan dust, after Beryl, I really don't think there's going to be a lot to be concerned about. But early last week, we didn't think much was going to happen, and we ended up with a hurricane by Friday. So those models do change, and that's why I don't want anybody to get too crazy about a hurricane model that goes out 6 or 7 days out, because those things could change quite a bit. And I'm seeing in the comments the dust didn't seem to affect Beryl very much. That's because it moved south of all this. This new Saharan dust and dry air is kind of really wrapped around the backside of it, and it did not have to deal with Saharan dust quite as much as what we're seeing with 96L. So as I was saying, go ahead and prepare. Everything's out there. There's plenty of water, plenty of batteries, plenty of non-perishable foods. In fact, there's not that many folks at the gas stations or at the propane fill-up or at the grocery stores either. So if you want to get your stuff done and not have to deal with the crowds, today is the time to do it. And as I've said, if you do this today and Beryl goes somewhere else, no worries. You'll have all of your stuff for the next one because there definitely will be more. But batteries, flashlights, water, and non-perishable foods, first aid, get that kit stocked up. Make sure you know how much prescription medicine you have right now, and also where you would get it if you run out and you had to evacuate. Personal hygiene, keep the soap and the shampoo handy, and the house cleaners as well. Save all your important papers as digital. Take pictures of that stuff or put it in a water-sealed container. Make sure you got a good basic tool set, and for the kids and the pets, make sure you have everything you need for them as well. And when it comes to pets, make sure you got a good carrier, and make sure you have their identification and their medicines as well. So a lot of folks have pets. These are things that you can do right now. There's a whole different list that you can do when you're 7 days out from a possible landfall. And then once hurricane warnings start to kick in 72 hours ahead, that's where you go ahead and put your evacuation plans in place. And I've always told folks, make sure you have 2 different evacuation routes. You don't have to have 2 different evacuation locations, but make sure you have 2 different routes planned out. That way you can avoid some of the traffic. And for those folks that have to come from other places like New Orleans or Houma and Thibodaux, if you use the other roads that we know are more familiar with, those folks can use the ones like Highway 90, the main roads, and that way they don't have to try to figure out a different way. We can let them have the bigger roads. We can use the back roads and get northward and then join the freeways as you get farther on toward the north. But just be hurricane ready right now, because we are definitely in hurricane season, and it goes all the way through November 30th, and most of the time we can have systems develop in September and October as well. So we've got many months to go. Well, I do hope that you enjoy Let's Talk Tropics. I sure do, and I'm glad to see all these folks that have joined in. And hopefully I'll be able to continue to keep this going. If you do like this, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to my channel and turn the notifications on. I do a morning show that has just your basic weather forecast and how it's going to affect your day. That's called Acadiana Weather Today. That drops on YouTube between 7:30 and 8 o'clock in the morning. And then weekdays, I do Let's Talk Tropics here as a live stream at noon. And if we get any severe weather, or if we go into wall-to-wall storm coverage mode, you will know when that is activated as well if you turn on those notifications. I'm Meteorologist Dave Baker. I hope you have a great afternoon. Try to stay cool. That heat advisory and excessive heat warning will stay in effect. Temperatures are going to be well into the 90s with a heat index value as high as 116. Stay cool, friends. I will see you tomorrow.